Welcome to the first part of our short video series. In this session, we want to show you how to come up with your first product ideas for your startup, and more importantly, where to actually source them. Let's start with the big question. How do I even come up with an idea? If you're planning to launch a business based on physical products, you've probably asked yourself, what could I sell? Or maybe you've heard it from others, friends who keep saying, if I only had an idea, I'd start a business tomorrow. The truth is, coming up with an idea isn't as hard as it sounds. Especially when it's about your first brand. That was exactly my experience back around 2014 or 2015. I got interested in small wallets. Why? Because back then I traveled a lot for work, gave presentations, and would often be on stage. I used to carry this big wallet in my front pants pocket, and it just looked ridiculous. Eventually my boss pulled me aside and said, "Sebastian, your presentation is great, the content is solid. Maybe you could do something about your hair." I had long hair at the time and played football, so I also had a few bruises. But what he really pointed out was the weird bulge in my pocket. And the reason was simple. I'd stopped keeping my wallet in my back pocket. I'd lost it twice living in Frankfurt, and thankfully, some kind neighbors left a note on my car telling me where to retrieve it. After losing it twice, I swore I wouldn't carry it in the back pocket anymore. So I started using the front pocket. And that's when I realized I needed a slimmer solution. It wasn't just a hobby, I had a real problem. And that's step 2. You solve your own problem, or you spot a problem that others have. I literally sat down one night with a beer, emptied out my fat old wallet, and asked myself, what do I actually need to carry? I minimized the cards, the cash, and realized, hey, this is all I need. That's how I began designing my first minimalist wallets, because I figured I'm probably not the only one with this issue. So your first step could be this. Focus on your hobbies. Think about what you're passionate about, whether it's travel, reading, pets, spending time with friends, or riding motorcycles. We're big motorcycle fans too. There are product ideas everywhere, especially in the things you already love. The second approach is solving a personal problem. Or maybe you notice a recurring issue your friends, co-workers, or even other businesses struggle with. If you can find a solution, you might just have a viable product. The next step is turning that solution into a scalable business, something that can reach many people. If you're already further along, you can take it up a notch with professional market research. The simplest version, search online. Look for problems, do manual research, or get together with a group of friends. Ideally somewhere remote, like a mountain cabin in the Bavarian Alps with no phone signal, no internet, no distractions. Just sit down and brainstorm. Want to go even more professional? Use analysis tools that scan marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart, and others. Tools like Helium10 or JungleScout can help you identify niches, find out which products are saturated or underserved, or where competitors have bad listings, poor images, weak content, or bad reviews. You can also look for trends on platforms like Wish or Trend Hunter, or simply scroll through Amazon yourself. Ask, what appeals to me? What could I imagine launching as my own product? Once you've found an idea, the next question is, where do I want to produce it? For most people, the default is China, and for good reason. We'll talk more about that later, but increasingly, there are strong arguments for producing in other Asian countries or even closer to your sales markets, especially if you're selling in Europe or the US. Here's why many still choose China. It's relatively easy to find a manufacturer for virtually any product. Costs are typically lower than in Europe. MOQs, minimum order quantities, tend to be much lower, which is great for smaller startups. Production speed can be faster thanks to highly optimized, automated manufacturing lines. There's a stereotype that made in China means low quality. But take it from us, we've spent years living and working in China. I spent 3 years there, Julia spent 9. Some of the best quality products we've seen come out of China, sometimes better than what you'll find in Europe. It just depends on whether you're willing to pay for it and how well you manage your supplier. But of course, there are downsides to sourcing in China. Freight costs have skyrocketed in the past couple of years. At times, containers cost up to $19,000, down from much lower pre-pandemic prices. Shipping times are long and port delays can stretch for weeks. There's always the risk of your product being copied. Production times can be delayed due to lockdowns or supply chain disruptions. Communication barriers, language, time zones, cultural differences can make collaboration tricky. Now let's look at Europe. There are pros and cons here as well. Pros: lower freight costs and faster delivery times. For example, a product made in Turkey can be on a truck and in Germany in 2 days. Fewer copycat risks. European producers tend to be more protective of customer designs. Sustainability is a growing concern, and made in Europe can be a strong selling point. European customers are often willing to pay more for products made locally. And don't underestimate this. Small order quantities are possible in Europe too, especially if you negotiate. Cons: it can be harder to even get quotes from European manufacturers. You'll often need to follow up with multiple emails and phone calls just to get a response. Response times and production lead times can be slower. MOQs are sometimes higher. Still, most things are negotiable. In 95% of cases, there's room to talk. Quality-wise, made in Europe speaks for itself. But this isn't China. Factories won't answer emails at night or on weekends. Holidays are taken seriously. Things move at a different pace. For us, the shift has been significant. Last year, only 10% of our production was outside of China. This year, it's already at 50 to 55%. We're seeing strong growth in European production, not just for Europe, but also for North America. Many sellers are now producing in Mexico or the US for the American market. So the question becomes, can you really produce things in Europe? Yes, almost everything, sure. Electronics like phones and TVs are still mostly made in China or Taiwan and probably will be. And for low-cost plastic items like webcam covers, producing in Europe might not offer much added value, but other than that, you can go through nearly all Amazon categories. Kitchen, household, garden, outdoor, baby products, sports, food, supplements, even for pets, cosmetics, health products, metal, wood, plastic goods, textiles, and find European manufacturers. So now that you have a product idea, the next step is figuring out how to find the right manufacturer and what to look for.